for me, it was exciting because this is probably one of the most intelligent, politically aware audiences that I've presented to. Normally we'll present to people who want to come and learn, but I found the level of awareness here to be incredibly high.
Patrick Henningsen is an American writer and global affairs analyst and founder of the independent news analysis website 21st Century Wire, and is the host of the Sunday Wire, a weekly radio show broadcast globally over the alternate current radio network. He has written for a number of international publications, as well as appearing on RT International, Al Jazeera, ITN, and Sky. He has also done underground reporting from conflict zones, including Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon. His website is patrickhenningsen.com.
We've always known there was a problem in the mainstream media, but we could never put our fingers on it. We could never, the structure of it was always obscured. You knew that there was some kind of network going on. The amount of fake news stories that we see in the mainstream media, the amount of pro-war propaganda, and most recently with regards to Russian fear-mongering, which is very in vogue right now in the West. And we didn't really understand how this all fit together behind the scenes, because quite frankly, you couldn't know unless you were behind the scenes. I'm working in the public side, so my access to information is really limited to what's publicly available. Although we work together and collaborate with lots of different journalists and reporters, but the structure is amazing. Something called the Integrity Initiative was leaked online. And what is this? This is the most incredible network, hive, of mainstream journalists, government bureaucrats, military intelligence operatives, regular intelligence operatives, all working behind the scenes to place news stories, supposedly according to their mission, this is government funded by the way, is to counter Russian influence or nefarious Russian disinformation. And I'm going to show you exactly what sort of stuff they've been putting out and in what publications. So they have clusters in different countries, groups of journalists, groups of operatives in America, Canada, in Norway possibly, in Holland, in Norway, in Germany, Spain, Italy, basically the NATO membership countries, okay? And so they want to resisting large-scale malicious disinformation and influence campaigns. I'm going to show you that they're the ones actually who've been waging the disinformation campaigns, smear attacks against journalists, against activists, okay? And some of the biggest think tanks are behind this. Government money is behind this. It's absolutely incredible. It's one of the most important leaks, I think, in recent years. In many ways on par with what Edward Snowden leaked in June 2013. So it's an effective network is best achieved, this is their own words, forming in each European country a cluster of well-informed people, the political, military, academic, journalistic think tank spheres who will track and analyze examples of disinformation in their country and inform decision makers and other interested parties about what is happening. The only problem with this is they don't ever show any examples of disinformation. They just talk about disinformation, fake news, Russian influence. They don't show any examples of it because there aren't many, the worst examples of it are coming out of the same publications as members of this organization. It's unbelievable. It's a great career if you can get it, okay? So who's funding it? One of the main funders is the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office. But hey, the US State Department, they're pitching in. NATO's pitching in. They've thrown some money at it. A few cryptic foundations like Smith Richardson connected with neoconservatives, the military-industrial complex, and of course, Facebook is involved as well. This is just a few of the backers of this. This is a multi-million-dollar annual operation. And this is only one part of a bigger operation. The Integrity Initiative is only one part. And this is the brainchild of a think tank called the Institute of Statecraft in the UK, very nefarious think tank with a lot of overlap of fellows who also belong to the Atlantic Council, that many of you may be a NATO-backed think tank, also a Gulf-backed think tank. So it's incredible. This is the sort of stuff that they're pumping out. I believe this is from probably the Times, I think. It's one of the main newspapers. I think Rupert Murdoch is the owner of this newspaper. So this smearing of Jeremy Corbyn in different forms. Jeremy Corbyn, the anti-Semitic problem in the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, the Kremlin agent, etc., etc. So this is the kind of output that some of the integrity journalists are placing in media every day. Every day. This is an onslaught. Okay? So here's the Atlantic Council fighting disinformation. This is their little operations lab, the DFR labs, Digital Forensic Research Lab. And what they do is track disinformation online. What they're really doing is picking out groups of people, how people are gravitating towards certain subjects and points of view and opinions. They're criminalizing having a point of view if that point of view runs counter to the orthodoxy. I wish I was making this up, but this is exactly what's happening. But they couch it in very beautiful graphics. They have heat maps on the internet showing Twitter activity. This is who's talking about the white helmets in Syria. They're all Russian agents and so forth. This is basically what they do. And some of our taxpayer money goes through these channels via NATO, via other government agencies like I've demonstrated. So we're paying for this, by the way. So we're paying for the machine who has their crosshairs with us in their sight. Isn't that amazing? And this is the times we're living in. Twitter is one of the main vectors, okay? And they've constructed their own version of WikiLeaks. It's called Bellingcat, which is based in The Hague, in the Netherlands right now. And that's the establishment's version of WikiLeaks. So notice in the media, they're really, really attacking Julian Assange, attacking WikiLeaks, discrediting it, smearing it, slandering it, calling it a Russian hostile intelligence agency. And at the same time, in parallel, they've constructed their own organization that's supposedly a whistleblower, open source research organization that create and provide the narratives to mainstream media and into the Integrity Initiative effort, essentially, which at the moment is to stoke up a new Cold War and demonize Russia, heighten tensions between Western Europe and Russia. That is the main point of this, by the way. It's not to produce any actual evidence of Russian interference in the elections because they haven't produced any, or that Russia has interfered in Brexit, etc. What they do is spin up these narratives, feed them through mainstream media, transform public opinion enough to make most people think that there's a problem and that we generally should back our governments just in case, because after all, Putin, he does, whatever Vladimir Putin's getting up to that week, I'll show you. So I was unfortunately a victim of one of these smear attacks by the DFR labs. I was quite flattered, actually, that they would pick me. So this was, I was being lectured to by their assistant director that I was somehow, I don't know how to describe this, making John McCain look bad, or saying that John McCain's affiliated with the military-industrial complex, and so a young university leaver who's been appointed their assistant director from Lithuania, she's lecturing me, an American, about my senator from Arizona and why I shouldn't say anything bad about him. I thought it's incredible. John McCain is one of the most divisive characters in American politics. He's hated by millions of people during his lifetime, and there's a reason for that, because there's never been a war that he didn't like. There's never been a terrorist group that he didn't want to ship weapons to, okay? So what they're doing is trying to rewrite history and then basically say that Patrick Henningsen at 21st Century Wire has said that he accused John McCain of being affiliated with groups aligned with neo-Nazis in the Ukraine. Yeah, and there's pictures of it online, of John McCain with the right sector. So this is gaslighting, what the DFR labs are attempting to do. Basically, tell you that something that's right in front of your eyes doesn't exist. That's gaslighting, okay? So it's incredible. And one of the people on the Integrity Initiative's US cluster is this journalist, Anne Applebaum. And she is the leading pack, the vanguard of the anti-Russian campaign in America. And she has a column on the Washington Post. This is what she's saying now, that we need to regulate social media for democracy's sake. This is the #1 commentator. She has a VIP place on the Sunday morning chat shows in America. Number one position. Anne Applebaum. The new censors won't delete your words, they'll just throw them out, they're saying. Okay, this is from her article in the Washington Post, which unfortunately I can't show you because it's behind a paywall. So the future of democracy is at stake. So bear in mind, this social media, this is the target. Users of social media. This is the establishment talking, make no mistake. This is the Integrity Initiative talking. That's funny, the Washington Post, this is their new strapline. Democracy dies in darkness. It's meant to be a warning, but it seems more like an instruction manual for this organization. And these people are elevated to the highest level. Do they really have a mandate? Do they represent the majority of the public opinion? I don't think so. I don't think so. But it's inflated. It's inflated by corporate media, by government, by the mainstream talk shows that have a monopoly over that upper echelon of media. So she's saying the internet, social media is the biggest threat to democracy. She is half correct. If democracy is about business as usual, in other words, having an elite oligarchy with a charade of democracy, controlling narratives, bringing us into one war after another, telling us that we're doing it for freedom and democracy. We're bombing Syria to bring democracy to the poor, beleaguered Syrians and the Arabs. They need us. After all, we are the pinnacle of Western civilization. It's our duty to export this. It's evangelical. This is vindicationism. This is vindicationism. This is the vindicationism that Barack Obama, Samantha Power, Susan Rice, the liberal wing of the establishment used to push responsibility protect in Kosovo, in Bosnia, in Libya, in Syria, everywhere, okay? And it is the exact same message that the neoconservatives use for Iraq and Afghanistan. There is no difference. It's identical. The only difference is how it's gift-wrapped. The rhetoric. It's a little more palatable to the liberal sensibility, the responsibility to protect, the human rights narrative. But the results are exactly the same. Liberal bombs kill as many people when they drop and explode than a neoconservative bomb. Ask anybody in Syria about that. So just to go back, this is a problem, okay? This is actually a genuine problem that we all need to acknowledge, that when you're running a campaign, whether you're running for senator, like Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz in the midterm elections this past November, Beto O'Rourke has a global audience. There's people in South Korea, Japan, Europe. They love this guy because LeBron James and Beyonce and everybody's backing this Democratic candidate. So when you're campaigning, this tidal wave on social media, no matter where you are in the world, could be a local city election. A tidal wave of hate or support is coming on platforms that have a monopoly over political discourse. I'm talking about Twitter, Facebook, etc. This is a new problem. This is not your normal democracy, okay? This is not grandma's democracy anymore. So we have this problem we're facing. For the power establishment, they're really afraid of this. They're trying to game it, but they're scared. But we have to be honest, this potentially is transforming our relationship with this thing called democracy. So business as usual is much more fearful of this than I think you and I are, and people who use and converse with other real people on social media. People like Anne Applebaum, this scares the hell out of them. because there's no place for the elite oligarchy to have a monopoly over ideas anymore. So this scares them. It doesn't scare me. I'm sure it probably doesn't scare a lot of you in here, but trust me, the power establishment, they're afraid of this. And they're coming out of the closet now with their real fascist agenda. When I say fascist, I'm probably referring to the Benito Mussolini definition, a convergence of corporate and state power. Because I think that's the most relevant to the situation I believe that we're facing today. So let's just remind ourselves, why do these people come to power? Bolsonaro, Trump, Corbyn's a populist, according to his enemies. Trump's a populist, Bolsonaro. How do these people come into power? How are they getting elected? How is this happening? A lot of people are tying themselves in knots trying to figure this out, and they want to say, oh, it's because they're racist, they're misogynist, populist, nationalist, white nationalist, anti-Semite, fascist, etc. The bottom line is, this is the fundamental problem. The elite have refused to acknowledge ever that they're wrong, never to ever be accountable. We can never get them to do this now, and the press will not hold them to account. This is a problem. The fourth estate has become a fifth column. The fourth estate, the press, is now a fifth column working against the people. That's the problem. So what do we get? This is what you get. People will vote for anybody that seems like an outsider, even if they don't like them. I know people that voted for Trump. They say, oh, I don't trust Trump. I don't believe Trump, but I'll take Trump because he seems to be talking my language more than the elite aristocracy, the plutocracy. And Trump might even be a member of the plutocracy. But that's not the point. The point is, this is where this situation has driven this to a point where you're going to get the Bolsonaros, the Trumps. Corbyn is from the left, but he's being demonized as a populist. Why? Because he's talking the people's language. Okay, so this is expressing itself on all parts of the traditional political paradigm. And we have to be honest about why it's happening and not just shouting expletives, because we're not going to figure out how this has happened in the first place. Therefore, we won't learn. Therefore, we're going to hit another wall in the next phase of this potential catastrophe. And the same here. Our leaders are decrying Putin and Xi as undemocratic, the regime, dictators. So basically anybody who's effective at governing, and I'm not endorsing the Chinese system per se, nor the Russian system, but you have to admit, Russia has pulled itself out of a huge economic hole in the 1990s. Okay, it was a disaster. A lot because of the United States and Wall Street's neoliberal policies and just general pillaging and plundering, but it's amazing what Russia's done to turn their economy around. China, it's incredible what China has done in 30 years, okay? That's down to effective leadership and effective government. Now, whether you agree with that government or not, or whether that's right for you in Europe, is another debate. But you can't just shout out bad, dictator, regime. We're not going to get anywhere with this line of thinking, but this is what the mainstream media is pushing. They don't want you to acknowledge what's really happening. So that brings us to the Silicon Valley. This is Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter. Jack is an interesting character, and just on its surface, looks like a troubled man most of the time. So Jack is doing some interesting things. Let's look at what Jack's been up to. This is interesting, and I'll show you right and left examples of this, by the way. So, critics of Kamala Harris were posting her district attorney. She's the latest Democratic leading candidate for president in 2020. They're posting her district attorney records while she was district attorney in California, or special attorney. So Twitter had those accounts shut down. They accused them of being bots because they were recently registered, and they said that I love the words here. The tweets posted by this critical account achieved an outsized platform for the size of its account. So in other words, it went viral. So they shut it down. This can happen to anybody. But this is what Twitter is doing actively. in the US, especially in the US, but not just the US. I'll show you. So shareable material, this is the threat, basically, things that go viral. This is Marco Rubio. He's a neoconservative. He was boasting a couple of weeks ago. He got Twitter to take down, I don't know if his office did it, but I assume he has a hand in it, to take down 2,000 accounts in Venezuela that were pro-Maduro. That is a US government colluding with Silicon Valley to shut down 2,000 accounts in Venezuela. That's incredible. So this hand extends globally. Now, it can happen in Norway, it can happen in France, Italy, wherever there's something that Washington doesn't like, or London doesn't like, or NATO doesn't like, they get on the phone to Jack. Jack, we got a problem. We've got bots and dodgy accounts. And the Atlantic Council says they're bots, so they must be bots. Because we're in bed with the Atlantic Council, they're providing us with our data, so it's all above board. And Anna Applebaum says it's true as well. So Jack's like, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll do that. Don't worry, fine. And so there's a little back scratching going on between the billionaire class and the government. There's a lot at stake, by the way, in terms of corporate taxation and so forth. So, and Marco's bragging that he's in touch with the military leaders who are potentially going to defect and help stage a coup in Venezuela in the same breath. Okay, this is Twitter. This is what they're involved in. And the New Knowledge, NBC News, their sources, the New Knowledge, said that Tulsi Gabbard, running for president in 2020, that her campaign is being propelled by the Kremlin. Is there any proof for this? Well, NBC News, this is one of the top most respected news outlets, media outlets in the United States. Is there any proof of this? I don't know. They claim there is. Who is the New Knowledge? Who are they? The New Knowledge. We detect, monitor, mitigate social media manipulation. Really? There's one of their funders, the founder of LinkedIn, another Silicon Valley billionaire, Reid Hoffman. And actually, here's what they did. They created fake Russian bot accounts on Twitter to support a Republican senator in Alabama named Roy Moore, and planted fake news stories into the media that said that he was being helped by the Russians. That's the LinkedIn founder funding a firm, creating fake Russian accounts to make someone look like they're supported by Russia in a US Senate race. What level of fraud is this? And NBC News goes and uses them as a source to demonize Tulsi Gabbard a month later. We've got a serious problem. This is corruption on a level, and the media is not going anywhere near this because they are implicated in it. That's why they won't cover the real scandal behind this. It's incredible. So there's another billionaire manipulating, meddling. So who is Jack Dorsey going to attack? Well, the Venezuelan socialists, the American conservatives is deleting those accounts. Jack's also going to attack Bernie Sanders progressives in some cases, demonize other people through accusations and so forth, anti-globalist activists. So on the right and the left, Twitter is knocking them down. Anti-war, anti-interventionist, anti-imperialist. These are people they're deeming the establishment and these think tanks as conspiracy theorists. That's Twitter. They control a big chunk of the global political conversation. And then add LinkedIn as well there with the Tulsi Gabbard smear campaign. Interesting, isn't it? A lot of power there. So here's Facebook, right before the midterm elections, just knocked out 800 accounts, pages in total, right before the midterms. Is that not election meddling? That's Facebook. This is incredible. So they are going in and just wiping the deck before an election. This is the thing they're accusing the Russians of doing, but haven't produced any evidence that the Russians did it. And here they are. Interesting, isn't it? Facebook is also deleting Palestinian accounts at the orders of the US and Israeli government. Fact. Facebook. So, like Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg deplatforms, deletes Palestinians. On the left, US Republican conservatives. On the right, alternative media on the left as well. The Free Brazil movement, that was a right-wing movement. They even got deplatformed in Brazil. And again, the anti-war, anti-interventionists, anti-imperialists as well. That's Facebook. Great. Robert Perry had this prescient quote before he passed away recently. He said, "You don't need a huge amount of imagination to see how this combination of mainstream groupthink, artificial intelligence," he's talking about algorithms, "could create an Orwellian future which would only one side of the story gets told and the other side simply disappears from view." Robert Perry, award-winning journalist, sadly not with us anymore. So you're all familiar with this cycle, and this is basically how it works. I'll show you some examples of this in a second. But a report comes out, a government source is cited, could be from the Trump or Obama administration. It makes it to the news wires, AP, Reuters, and from there the media outlets pick it up. The media outlets pick it up, and then public opinion is affected. What's the reaction? Outrage. Could be a Russian conspiracy. It could be, the Assad did something or other. Okay, we're outraged. And what does that happen? The public opinion filters up to our political representatives because activist groups, advocacy groups putting pressure, the press putting pressure on politicians, policymakers, and it results in a new policy. What could that policy be? Take your pick. Military intervention, support for moderate rebels, more money for USAID to send in aid to Venezuela this last week, whatever. But this is how the cycle works. So a fake news story, more likely than not, initiates this cycle. This is exactly how it works, and I think everybody in here could probably plug a story into this little graph and watch the machine work, okay? Fake news in the mainstream becomes policy. This is how it works. So you could say this is how it worked with Iraq, exactly with Libya, Syria, Yemen, Venezuela, North Korea, Yugoslavia. It was this process. This is how it works. And most people don't see this process. It seems obvious to us looking at it, but actually it is quite, difficult to spot. So there's just one example. I mean, I could give you hundreds of these, but Assad government may be developing a new type of chemical weapon, a new class of chemical weapons, according to a U.S. official. This started off on Reuters and then filtered into all the different mainstream media outlets. Exactly how I showed you just a second ago. So is there any truth to it? Probably not. There seems to be an appetite for this in media, though. Highly likely. Reuters, February 1st, 2018. Highly likely. Fake news. And this comes out every day. Every day we get this. So let's look at fake news for a minute. I'm just going to run very quickly through this amazing collection of Russian fake news. Manafort held secret talks with Assange. This front page of The Guardian. It got debunked while it was online, and I thought, oh, there's no way they're going to put this on the morning newspaper the following morning in the front page, but they did. This was a fake story, and The Guardian even went in cleverly edited online without putting a retraction out. Sneaky journalism. This is The Guardian. They're very well respected, right? So incredibly, it's fantasy fiction, basically. Again, Trump advisors sought WikiLeaks emails via Nigel Farage. This is a fake story, another one in The Guardian, trying to basically put Brexit in the frame. Then they tried to cover this up and saying that the Russians planted the information to The Guardian journalist to throw him into a position where he unknowingly made a fake news story on the front page of The Guardian. Can you believe it? And who posted this story? A CIA agent under a pen name in Politico. This is insane. This is insane. This is obvious what's going on here. But the Washington Post won't talk about it. CNN won't talk about it. None of the mainstream will talk about it. It's just too much for them. Assange gives praise to Trump, blasts Clinton in an interview. They're trying to claim that Assange has a long relationship with the Putin regime. This is fake news. This was debunked. Another fake. Julian Assange, secret plan, Russia's plan to help him escape the embassy in London. Fake news, another fake. Half the Russian expats are spies, according to the Times here. That was cascaded through a number of outlets. So 50,000 Russian spies in the UK, apparently. It's pretty amazing. The Russians interfered in the midterm elections back in November. This was all coming out before the midterms. Putin wants your vote. Fake news. It's fake news. But Russia hacked the Vermont electrical grid. This is the Washington Post. Democracy dies in darkness, no pun intended. Fake news story. Russia could cut off your internet because one of their subs was swimming past the internet cable into the Atlantic, apparently. So Putin wants to cut your internet. You should all be afraid. That's The Guardian. The Russian World Cup, Boris Johnson says Russia needs to do more to protect English fans. Well, this sort of press coverage kept English fans from coming to the World Cup in 2018. And England actually did pretty good. They almost made the semifinals. Imagine if they had all of their supporters there. So Britain, in their desire to demonize the Russians, scared away their own supporters and deprived Britain of potentially a World Cup victory. And they're still talking about 1966 World Cup in England. So, I mean, they'd be talking about it for another 50 years. They lost that opportunity. What a shame. So Russia's nuke targets in Britain is standard stuff here. This is one of my favorites. Putin has weaponized a 14-legged squid. I kid you not, this is a major UK daily newspaper. This is the sort of stuff the Integrity Initiative is pumping out. This is one of my favorites. Putin has unleashed a cyborg rat, an army of cyborg. It's the Daily Mail. And the Masha the Bear, it's a popular children's animation program, but apparently this is how Russia is getting into the back door of the minds of your children in the West. It's an award-winning show. So Putin has hijacked Pokemon Go. This is the app. This is CNN. It's exclusive as well. So amazing, isn't it? And Putin has been reincarnated because actually these are photos of him from 1920, 1941. This is the Telegraph. It's funny, isn't it? Do you want more? I've got to. You know they're getting desperate when they pull this one out. Look at this. A coven of Russian witches perform a circle of power ritual in Moscow to summon the supernatural energy to support Putin. This was this week in the Daily Mail. Okay, amazing. Poor Vlad. He can't win with this. So I've just shown you a little sample of a bunch of fake news stories. I've got 100 more of those. If we had a few hours, I could show you this. So this is what the Integrity Initiative and this type of effort is pumping out. So where's the Russian disinformation? Where is it? So, and these are all of the different wars, all of the claims over the years that have been used to sell war in the exact same way they're doing it today. The difference is the CIA did this back in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Now it's been outsourced to think tanks. It's been spread around through NGOs, and the mainstream media are now out of the closet in their involvement of this. And they have all these different organizations to police fake news on the internet. NewsGuard, here's one that attacked us recently, Media Bias Fact Check. And the BBC even went, this is one of the people putting fake news out during the 2016 elections. His name is Christopher Blair. He posed as a conservative, put out fake news stories. The BBC reported on this. Made lots of money. He's a Democrat political operative, according to the BBC. But they were kind of cheering this. This is what initiated the whole fake news crisis. Efforts of this cell here. Here he is with his pug dog. It's very cute. So he got people's accounts banned, said he was, doing great work and proud of what he did, putting out actual fake news stories to try to demonize Trump supporters. Whether you support Trump or not, this level of nefarious covert activity is pretty dirty, especially when they're putting censorship protocols in place to fight this supposed problem that's affecting all of us, this censorship. The whole problem, a lot of it, a good chunk of it, was artificial. It was conjured. It's fake. The crisis is fake. What's real is the censorship. What's real is the algorithms erasing people, targeting anti-war activists, targeting socialist activists, targeting even right-wing activists. You have to apply justice evenly in this case. Do we want a free society with a plurality of opinion? Or are we going to let a Sanhedrin, let a group of Pharisees dictate to us what we should read and can't read? So who's threatening our democracy? Who's planting fake news? Who's running clandestine networks with the government and military? Who's doing all this? Who's organizing smear campaigns? Who's doing this? Our own governments? Putin? No. That's who's doing it. That's what the evidence shows. Not Russia. And the level of brainwashing right now, mass brainwashing, is unbelievable. The amount of people that have bought into this narrative. And the evidence is right in front of our face. It is absolutely incredible. So they want you to think RT, little old RT, is poisoning the minds of the world. And look at all these billion-dollar corporations surrounding them. New York Times. That's the problem. So we have a big problem. It's real, and we need to engage with this problem. We need to be honest about how this is affecting everybody. Because if we want an open society, a fair society, an open forum to discuss ideas, to move forward in life, okay, it has to be open for everybody. And the establishment does not want that.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you.